I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. ¿Hay alguien que necesita intérprete para la Junta? Do we have any requests for translation?
No, Trustee Good, no requests this time.
Thank you very much. This meeting is being recorded or broadcasted. Images and sounds may be captured of those attending the meeting. Please make sure to state your name. And I would like to ask, this is going to be a first, Superintendent Flores to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Please stand, place your hand on your heart. Ready, begin.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Flores.
Sure.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
This is James. I will make that motion to approve it.
This is BC. I second, if you can hear me.
We can hear you. And welcome. We have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Gwen Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Paceno.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number C, general public comment. Do we have any general?
Yes, we do. We have one general comment today, Trustee Good. The first comment is from Kathy Sousa. I'm glad to see that you're going to be providing an update if/when the schools will be opening up at tonight's board meeting. Morgan Hill Unified has held a few community forums online to discuss this subject and has let their families know the status of their PPE procurement. They're fully stocked and classrooms ready to go, they said, with the earliest they will return is January due to the COVID numbers in their town. That would change if the COVID numbers go up, of course, but this gives parents an idea of what to plan for. I would like to encourage GUSD to be as transparent as Morgan Hill Unified has been, and to be as clear as possible what exactly is needed at this point. So far, the schools have been closed since March of last year, and there have been no town halls for all parents to become informed on what is going on, and this leaves working parents in the hard position of not knowing what kind of flexibility they need to negotiate in their work schedules for the near future. The decision to open or remain closed is what it is. This is your decision to make, and I do not envy you this to make. But I do ask that you begin to actively work to inform the GUSD community of your intentions so that we can then work with our employers for flexibility needed and the anticipated timeline for that flexibility. Just as you need to know prior to the first day of school how many kids you will have showing up to school, we as working parents need to know if we're looking at the kids being home this whole school year and what is anticipated for the next school year. Absence of this consistent transparency, we will have to make assumptions and hope we are doing what is best for our children. That concludes public comment.
And does that conclude public comment?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have item number D, report of action taken in closed session. There were no reportable actions taken in closed session. Next, we have item number 4, student board member report. Madison Cortez, Mount Madonna High School.
Hi, this is Madison Cortez with Mount Madonna High School, here to give the fall update. Am I supposed to share my screen or do we have it up?
It looks like
Got
it's
it,
up.
Madison.
Okay. For current events, on August 12th, we had our first day of distance learning. On September 2nd, we handed out Chromebooks, textbooks, and took ID pictures, which we postponed twice due to the poor air quality. September 24th, we had our back to school night for Mount Madonna, which was all virtual. At those handouts, we also social distance following all the procedures needed to keep our staff and students safe. For Mount Madonna upcoming events, October 27th, we have our next Gavilan College info session with Gavilan College representatives and our counselor, Mrs. Salgado. On October 28th, we have our virtual first quarter award ceremony. For our Eliot Elementary School fall update for events, On behalf of the PBIS Coalition, Eliot was recognized for the outstanding contribution of support and care during the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic and resulting disruptions to the school. In September, they also held a virtual Crazy Hair Day. Some more events for Eliot. They held a parent support network, which was focused on educating parents in the Eliot community on different programs students are using during their distance learning. They also began an on-site Power program with Power School for Eliot students at Glenview. Students are receiving breakfast and lunch and have an area to do their work. Spearheaded by one of Eliot's second grade teachers, Eliot students engaged in a letter writing campaign for firefighters as a thanks for all their life-saving and firefighting efforts. The picture next to it is one of the letters that one of the Eliot students sent in. They also held 2 successful materials distribution events with social distancing. And that concludes the update from Mount Madonna and Eliot.
Thank you very much for your report, Madison. Very good.
Thank you.
Next, we have Superintendent Report, Dr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Good. At the last board meeting, I let you know about an upcoming event that Saturday that called the South County CalSOAP Orientation that also honored my husband, and 2 of the speakers, one of them, Deb Padilla, said some just absolutely wonderful things about the impact that he had on students who are with a similar mission as CalSOAP. I was able to go to the initial orientation and dropped in on a bunch of the sessions, and I was very impressed. Presenters did a great job. Students asked great questions, and I thought there was just valuable information shared, both with students and parents, by the way. There were parent workshops and student workshops, and pretty good attendance from what I could tell. On October 5th and 9th, our negotiating team met with the GTA negotiating team, and we have another day coming up next Wednesday. Melanie and Natalie, 2 of our people on tonight, the 2nd annual Parent Club Bootcamp put together by Melanie Corona and Natalie Martinez is just a great concept, I think, for introducing parents to just about everything they need to know about the district. And these are usually home and school club parents, and I was asked to come and speak to the parents that attended about our reopening plans. We had our SPAC meeting on Monday night and had really good attendance. Our special topic it's the Superintendent's Parent Advisory Committee. There's a parent from every school site that attends these monthly meetings. The topic they'd requested for this meeting was about social, emotional, and mental health issues, and we had some excellent presenters, and I gave them also an update on the reopening planning process. Yesterday, I watched the Assembly Education and Communications Committee talk about the digital divide. It was a fascinating hearing. 2 committees that participated in this hearing. We heard from a wide range of speakers, and I had actually prepared public comments, but it went on so long I never got to give my public comments about our challenges with the digital divide in our district. But fortunately, many of the speakers before me were saying the exact same things that I would have said. They talked about pockets of their district that had no internet, unreliable internet, all kinds of issues that we faced here in our district. I thought one of the most interesting statistics I heard was from Tony Thurman, the State Superintendent of Instruction, who said they're estimating, and this is a low number, they think it's higher, that 300,000 students in California are not online yet. So we are not unique. It doesn't make us feel any better, but many, many districts across the state are struggling. And the purpose of this hearing was to talk about the state of California putting funding into their ongoing budget to address this issue by coming up with wiring throughout the state. And many speakers made the statement that every family in the state should have access to the internet, just like they have electricity, gas, and water. So I'm hoping that this committee will be taking some concrete proposals to the legislature to address this huge issue of internet connections for students. Our reopening planning committee met again yesterday. As you know, I reconvened the committee over a month ago. We've met a couple of times as a full committee and in our 3 subcommittees, and I'm going to be reporting on that later in the agenda, as you know. Today we had our great Shakeout earthquake drill, which was really interesting because some of us, including staff and students, were at home during the drill, but thanks to our safety officer, teachers were given some strategies on how to help students practice at home. And we were able to test our radio system. And for the first time ever, I tested it from my home and it worked beautifully. It was just like I was in my office. And all of our sites participated. So we did a radio check with everybody. I've completed all my elementary visits at this point, and thanks again to board members, BC, Linda, for attending some of these visits. So we went to Luigi, Glenview, and yesterday I went to Rod Kelly by myself. There were no board members. I only visited K3 because 4 or 5 teachers were in a GLAD training. So I am going to go back and cover 4 or 5 if any of you are interested. We just have to find a date. Just like I've said in prior superintendent's reports, I'm just so impressed, and I know the board members articulated the same thing last time, at the great job our staff are doing for providing the best plan they can for their students, considering they're doing it on computers and students are not in the classroom right in front of them. Have an upcoming visit for GPS, and then we start the middle school visits. So you're welcome to join me as I visit the 3 middle schools. And then we start our APS visits, which we have to talk about as a team, how we're going to do those virtually. And some upcoming events that we all are very much aware. Election Day on the 3rd, please get out and vote. And then we have a staff development day on November 6th, so we won't have students on that day. And that concludes my report. As you know, later I'll be giving you a report about reopening, or the topic of reopening.
Thank you very much for your report, Dr. Flores. Next, we have the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Trustee Fyack. I move to approve.
Trustee Pace, I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Twen Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Tate,
Yes.
Linda Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number 7A, public hearing, AB 1200 disclosure of tentative agreement between the Classified School Employees Association and GUSD for coronavirus relief one-time stipend. Mr. Mesa.
Mr. Good, I'm actually going to make a comment before all of these items related to our proposal to pay a stipend to all employees in our organization. So first, I want to let you know tonight we're proposing this 3% stipend for our classified units, our CSCA and GFP units, and for all management and confidential staff. We have also made the same offer to our GTA bargaining unit, and we've been sharing proposals back and forth. So we haven't reached agreement yet with GTA, but we're very hopeful that we will reach agreement hopefully by the next board meeting. But I wanted to share with the public how strongly I feel about these stipends, and I know the board agrees with me and our cabinet members who are part of this. As I've mentioned at every single board meeting since we started this school year, I am just so impressed and grateful for the incredible job our staff are doing during the most challenging times we've ever had in public education. None of us could imagine a year ago that we would be providing a distance learning and online education to our students in the middle of a pandemic. And I have to say, I am so impressed with the response of our staff. Our teachers are just doing a phenomenal job. These site visits have just reaffirmed that. And we've been able to see them be very innovative, be problem solvers, become technology specialists. They're working many more hours than they've ever worked, I think. And we're just so proud of them. Our classified staff and our paraprofessionals have just responded in the most amazing ways. We've literally had to ask them to do completely different jobs, and they've done it with a smile on their face, and they're doing it very well. And everyone in this organization, including management and confidential, have probably never worked harder in their careers. This has been the most challenging period of our careers. And on top of it, people are spending money out of their pockets to make this work. So classroom teachers are buying things to make distance learning work better in their rooms. And I know I've heard about incredible donations by staff from all our bargaining units to make this work. So we felt it was really important that we acknowledge that effort and in many cases sacrifices. People are putting their classrooms before and their schools before other personal needs, and we just appreciate that so very much. And out of these one-time relief funds that Mr. Alvar will explain better than me, we have this opportunity to recognize the additional labor, the additional effort, and the out-of-pocket expenses of our employees across the district. It's our intent to pay this 3% stipend to all employees in the district, and we're very close to that. We still have one bargaining unit, GTA, to finalize this proposal. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Mesa.
Thank you, Dr. Flores, as our superintendent mentioned, and good evening, board and members of the public as well. We do have one-time learning mitigation funds called the coronavirus relief funds, one-time federal funding sources to acknowledge the hard work that our employees are doing right in the middle of this pandemic, supporting the district's distance learning needs. And so to that end, the Assembly Bill AB 1200 does require the school district to publicly disclose provisions of all collective bargaining agreements before they become binding to the district. AB 2756 requires that the superintendent and I certify that we can meet our obligations, and we did so on October 5th. I completed those disclosure forms and immediately forwarded them to our oversight agency, the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And they in turn have reviewed those disclosure forms, acknowledged their accuracy, and have returned a letter which is included in the board packet called SCCOE disclosure letter for these two agreements. So this is the public hearing section of the item, and a subsequent item on the agenda in the action section will actually ask the board for action on this matter. As discussed before, the terms are to provide a one-time stipend to members of the Classified School Employee Association, better known as CSEA, for supporting the distance learning needs, performing duties outside their normal scope of work, going above and beyond their work. The one-time stipend will be funded, as I mentioned, through the coronavirus relief funds, one-time funding. Part of the packet, of course, includes the multi-year projection, a side letter, disclosure letter. Mr. Winslow will go into detail in just a bit. The disclosure forms and the side letter, of course, and the county acknowledgement letter. This is a public hearing. And the cost associated with this agreement is $467,637, again, funded by the Corona Relief Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. This is a public hearing. Do you have any public comment?
No public comment for this item, Trustee Good.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing then. Are there any board questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Mesa. We'll move on to item number B, public hearing AB 1200, public disclosure of tentative agreement between the Gilroy Federation of Paraeducators and GUSD for a one-time coronavirus relief stipend. This is also a public hearing. So I'll open that.
Thank you, President Good. In the same fashion as we offer to all employees of Gilroy Unified, the Gilroy Federation of Paraeducators, if approved, will receive the same one-time 3% stipend funded out of the Corona Relief funds. The cost to their membership is $208,212, again, funded by the Coronavirus Relief Fund, with one-time federal funding source. Same process was followed for them, of course. Dr. Flores and I certify that we met the obligations, that we can meet our obligations, certify that to the county office on October 5th. They in turn have acknowledged those same disclosure forms, review them for accuracy, etc. on October 13th. The multi-year projection and relevant documents in the same fashion have been included in your board packet. Again, the cost to the district for the 3% one-time stipend funded out of the coronavirus relief funds for the paraeducators is a total of $208,212.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment for this item, Trustee Good.
All right, then we'll close the public hearing and move on to item 8A, side letter between Gilroy Unified School District and the California School Employees Association, Chapter 69, regarding 2020-2021 distance learning stipend.
Thank you very much, President Good. So we are presenting to the board today an action item. This is the side letter that actually will trigger the 3%. And I want to start by saying we are very lucky as a district, and I'm very honored to be able to work with CSEA and their strong leadership and just an amazing group of people who have really, as Dr. Flores has highlighted, stepped up to the plate during an unprecedented time. Today, we're providing to the board a signed agreement between the district and CSEA to enact this 3%, as well as an appendix that defines some of the items that they have had to do during the coronavirus pandemic that goes above and beyond their normal duties and their normal working conditions. And so we're requesting that the board approve this action item side letter between Gilroy Unified and CSEA.
Thank you. Are there any board questions or comments? Seeing none, this is an action item.
This is Linda. Move approval.
This is James.
I think we had a second. I didn't hear which was James, Mr. Pace.
BC got it.
BC, okay. So we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Gwen Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Paceno.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item 8B, side letter between the Gilroy Unified School District and educators regarding the 2020-2021 distance learning stipend. Mr. Winslow.
Thank you, President Good. In a very similar fashion, I just want to highlight a great working relationship we have with the Gilroy Federation of Paraeducators, district employees that work with some of the neediest students in our district who have really stepped up to the plate for this 3% one-time stipend. They've done an amazing job, and we're taking to the board today a recommendation to approve the side letter between the Gilroy Federation of Paraeducators, as well as a similar appendix describing some of those additional duties that they've done above and beyond the call of duty. And so we're requesting that the board take action on 8B today.
Thank you. Any board questions or comments? And if not, I will entertain a motion.
This is BC. Move to approve.
This is James. I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Gwen Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number C, disclosure and approval of one-time coronavirus stipend for confidential and management employees. This is an action item. Approval of this action item will provide certificated management, classified management, confidential, and the superintendent and two assistant superintendents with a one-time bonus payment in the amount of 3% of each individual's current salary. This is similar to the one-time bonus payment proposals for the other bargaining units. And Mr. Mesa, do you have a dollar amount for this budget item?
Yes, thank you, Trustee Good, President Good. The total cost of the equivalent 3% stipend is $285,135 and will be funded by the Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. It's a subset of those same federal one-time funding sources as we anticipate to fully have utilized the Corona Relief Funds with other items.
Are there any board questions or comments? I would like to comment that this is a public hearing is not required for this item. However, in an attempt to be completely transparent, we're handling it just as if there would have been a public hearing. And I would entertain a motion if there's no questions or comments.
This is Linda, move approval.
This is James. I will second.
Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Quinn Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number D, update regarding the planning process for reopening considerations. You're muted, Dr. Flores.
I look forward to the day when somebody doesn't have to tell me that. Okay, I have some prepared comments that I'll share with you. As you know, Santa Clara County now is in the orange tier of the state's monitoring system. And before that, we were in the red tier. When a county is in this tier, schools may reopen. However, that's only half of the equation. The other half is that school districts must be able to demonstrate that they meet the requirements and recommendations in the report titled COVID-19 Prepared, Reopening the Santa Clara County K-12 Schools for the 2020-2021 school year. This document was co-authored by the Santa Clara Public Health Department and the Santa Clara County Office of Ed. The report was initially released on June 30th and was recently revised and released again on September 21st, and we've been studying it ever since. The report can be accessed on the Santa Clara County Public Health Department's website. As you know, in May and June, a committee of about 30 individuals met to consider options for this current school year, and those were discussed and a decision was made at the July 14th board meeting. I recently reconvened the same committee. We actually have expanded, we have some new members, and I decided to just call it the Reopening Planning Committee. I had such a long name for the committee before, so it's just short and sweet, Reopening Planning Committee. We've met several times and we'll continue meeting every 2 to 3 weeks until we're ready to make a recommendation to the board regarding if our schools should reopen this school year, and if so, at what levels and when. And we understand that ultimately the final decision will be made by the board. After this series of meetings with the committee in January, I will provide an update to the board. Until then, and until a decision is made at the board level, our schools will continue in distance learning, just as districts in our county are doing with a few exceptions. In fact, at the Assembly Education Committee meeting yesterday, I found it interesting that Tony Thurmond announced that 97% of districts in California are implementing distance learning currently. The Planning Committee and staff have much work to do. First and foremost, we must assess whether we can implement the requirements and recommendations in the COVID-19 prepared document. Our top priority is the safety of our staff and students. And at this time, we are not convinced that we can implement all the requirements and recommendations in the report. Meeting the requirements and recommendations in this document will dictate what type of instructional program can be offered. For instance, the 6-foot distancing requirement recommendation means that we will not be able to bring all students back at once at any level. We've already set up classrooms with desks 6 feet apart, and we've found that we are only able to house about 12 students in our classrooms. As I know that the board is very interested in data, and I think it'll make you happy to know we are too. And we're going to continue to monitor COVID-19 data, particularly in Gilroy. And as you know, Gilroy has the second highest COVID-19 case count and rate per 100,000 in the county. Santa Clara County has been doing much better as a whole, but still the 7-day rolling average is still about 100 cases. And we are the 9th highest county in the state. COVID-19 cases are on the rise in 35 states and in Europe, and this will likely eventually impact California's numbers. Concerns have been stated by top scientists and doctors about the winter months and a likely increase in COVID-19, another reason for not making a decision until January. On the news this weekend, it was reported that cases of COVID-19 among children are steadily increasing, and it was over 700,000 cases now. We're also following what's happening in other districts across the country that opened at the beginning of the school year and have now closed, such as those in New York City, where 124 schools have closed in the last month. In addition to closely following the data, we are reviewing the amount of PPEs that we have in stock and what will be needed if students and staff return. We're addressing protocols for reporting COVID-19 cases. We're developing protocols for contact tracing. We're studying how we would transport children with fewer students on a bus at a time. We're developing cleaning protocols and frequency levels, determining how to best serve meals safely, dealing with the need to keep students and staff 6 feet apart in hallways and playgrounds, and so much more. In addition to meeting with the planning committee, we'll continue to meet with our principals whose input has been invaluable. We're also meeting with parent groups to hear their important input about the reopening consideration. Lastly, to assist the committee in the planning process, we asked parents, students, certificated staff, and classified staff my dog just interrupted me. Lastly, to assist the committee in the planning process, we asked parents, students, certificated staff, and classified staff to complete a survey about distance learning and about reopening schools. There was a great response rate. We had over 3,600 students in grades 5-12 respond. Parents and guardians, we had over 9,800. Certificated staff, 530. And classified and paraeducators, 339. We had almost all our staff complete these surveys. That's pretty amazing. We will share the complete survey results at a later time, but I do want to share tonight the responses to the question on each survey regarding the comfort level of the groups about returning to work or school. 59% of our certificated staff and 48% of our classified staff marked a 1 or 2 on this survey, which indicates that many of our staff are not comfortable returning to school. 45% of our parents and 31% of our students marked a 1 or 2, indicating that there are also many parents and students not comfortable returning at this time. We'll continue to monitor this, may administer another survey after the winter break, but I think those are significant findings. We realize this is one of the most important topics that we'll address this school year. And we understand that there's strong opinions about reopening of schools. Our challenge and our mission is a very big one, which is to balance the need to keep students and staff safe while providing the best educational program that we can. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take questions. for comments.
Are there any board questions or comments?
This is Trustee Diaz.
Trustee Diaz?
Just want to echo that I share the same sentiments that you're sharing as well. I've been following local trends and everything from the city itself. I get as much info as is readily available. Some of it is not available, but you can surmise or kind of make some inferences from some of the data you see at the county level, and then you see the city level, and you can kind of figure out what the percentages for the city. I see the same number you see in terms of the per capita per 100,000. The state level, the compounding influenza and winter season coming upon us. I do note that Dr. Fauci had mentioned that he would have loved for our country to reach the 10,000 per day case limit, and we're actually increasing and closer to 50,000 now. So I keep that in mind as well. And keeping in line with the rest of the county that's looking for guidance up until at least January sounds really reasonable to me, considering the circumstances. So thank you, and we are monitoring it as well.
Any other board comments or questions?
This is Linda.
Trustee Pacino?
I sit on the reopening planning committee as the board rep. And I want to say, just reiterate that all employee groups are reflected in that committee. And they have the same concerns, obviously, as a committee, and are very concerned not only about student safety, but employee safety as well. And in our community, as Trustee Diaz and also Superintendent Flores says, we are an at-risk community in Gilroy. We may not want to admit that, may not be popular to say, but we are the second highest in the county. And where other districts, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Flores, but I think there are only 2 districts in the county out of 31 districts in the county that are opening on a hybrid basis so far. And when we talk about opening schools, my concern is that people think we will open as usual. And there's nothing as usual with COVID. We now have distance learning access centers, and we have 50 kids at Glenview and 50 kids at Rucker. And there are only 10 to 12 kids in a classroom. That's all, with 2 adults. And that program is running with 50 kids and about 14 adults. That's not scalable in order to keep everybody safe. So that was a big eye opener for me in terms of being on the reopening planning committee, because what the protocols are demanding is, for safety reasons, for everybody's safety reasons, it's not feasible right now as it stands and as the concentration is in our community. So we're not saying we're reopening in January. I want to make that clear. What Dr. Flores said is we would look at it again in January. So that's a really important distinction. Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? Well, thank you for your report, Dr. Flores. I agree with both Trustee Diaz and Trustee Pacino. This is something that is going to require a lot of effort, and we have to get right, because if we open sooner than we should, we're going to back and forth. And it's been hard enough to get distance learning moving and everybody moving in the same direction, moving forward. I can't think of anything worse than opening too soon and then a week or 2 later having to close again. So thank you for your efforts and work on the committee and conducting the survey, which the results weren't surprising to me, but now we have some data. And you're right, because Gilroy happens to be in a certain range, or I'm sorry, the county happens to be in a certain range, Gilroy, we have our own deal going, and it's much worse than most other areas of the county. So thank you very much for your report. Next, we have item number E, monthly district cash flow update.
Good evening, Board President, Good, and board members. Let me share my screen. Can you see that? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's time to bring you up to date on our monthly cash flow, which this is the entire unrestricted and restricted general fund. This screen here is July through September actuals. And if you look at September, we started with a little over 28.9 million. We received in September 13.5 million, and a lot of that, probably around 7 million or so, was part of the coronavirus relief fund dollars. And our cash outflow for that month for September is a little over 10.8. And if you look down below, the total compensation for all employees was a little over $8.3 million, which is part of that 10.8 up there that we spent for the entire month. The ending cash for September is a little over 32.4. And without a TRAN, if we didn't have our TRAN, it would be a little over 27.4 million. Total compensation for the month was a 77 percentile. And then the rest of this screen here is your October through June projections, and they're pretty much the same as the last time we met. And that last column there is what we are banking on as far as deferrals and accruals for the year. And this is just another chart, a way of looking at the cash inflow and the cash outflow. Any questions?
Any board questions or comments? Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Next, we have item number F, approval of purchase of 6,048 Chromebooks from Converge One, not to exceed $3,292,168.32.
Good evening. As Trustee Good said, we have 6,048 Chromebooks in the districts that we would like them to be replaced. And the reason is that these Chromebooks will reach the auto update expiration date next summer. When a Chromebook reaches the auto update expiration date, they will no longer receive the latest Chrome OS updates, and they will not receive security patches. The other downfall to that is that we will not be able to manage them either, which means that we will not be able to push CASP, for example, which is what we need for the students to test. And while right now we will not be testing students, right? This is a need that we have hopefully for the next school year. And I say hopefully because, we will like to return to the classrooms for next school year. And as presented in the October 1st board meeting, the IT department requested quotes from various vendors, and we did explore different platforms to better support the students in distance learning, but which were our plans pre-COVID. Right. And but unfortunately, because of the current environment, we realize that we are not able to implement a different platform at this moment because that would present a lot of challenges at the homes and also for teachers and the community as a whole. So I just want to talk a little bit about the model that we are recommending. And I want to start by saying that in the last 4 years, we had selected a particular model. And but we realized that that particular model was not enough, although it did meet the minimum system requirements to run the distance learning in the current environment. It was only the the minimum requirements, and so we started to have issues with that model. So that forced us to look into other options. And among all the quotes that we received and the different models that were proposed, we selected the Lenovo 500E. And E stands for education, right? And the model that we selected is not available to the public. I just want to mention that it's only available for education customers. And that's why probably you will not find it on any website. So the difference between the current model that we're using and the model that we have selected are quite different. So for example, the current model has 4 gigs of memory. The new model that we are proposing has 8 gigs of memory. That is twice the memory. The current model has 2 cores. The new model will have 4 cores. The current model has 32 gigs of storage. The new model has 64 gigs of storage. The current model has a touchscreen, which the students do like, and they do not want to go back to a traditional device. And the new model not only has a touchscreen, but is multi-point touch, and it also has Gorilla Glass, which is a little bit more resistant than the current model that we are using. So we also looked at other districts that are using this model, and we wanted to make sure that that it would support the requirements and the demands that we currently have. And we got really good feedback from other districts. Also, late in the week, last week, we received 2 models, not 2 models, 2 Chromebooks as evaluation units, and we ran some tests, and it is a big difference, between the current model and the model that we are proposing. What we also did is we found 2 students, and we give these Chromebooks to the students, to receive the feedback from the students, and they don't want to return the Chromebooks right now. They are pretty happy with them, right? Which that is great. I want to also mention, and I want to make sure that we know that this new model will only address the performance issues that we have at the device level, but it does not address, any of the other technology issues that might arise at, different places. And so with that, I think that I will ask Mr. Mesa to address the funding source for this recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Gassar. As Marvel mentioned, we put a lot of time and effort into looking at that model. And we also put a lot of time and effort looking into how to fund this major expense. So we are using the Corona relief funds, the federal funding sources, to fund 90% of this purchase. And then the remaining 10%, we're using the ESSER funds of subset of those learning loss mitigation funds to finance this major one-time expense.
Are there any board questions?
This is BC. So I understand that there'll be no money coming out of the general fund to pay for these?
That's correct, Trustee Doyle. We put a lot of time and effort, as I mentioned, to look at the distance learning needs. If we were absent the pandemic, put it that way, we wouldn't need to double up the power of these Chromebooks, essentially, which I then tie to the necessity of having those learning loss mitigation funds as previously mentioned by our Director of IT, Ms. Kazar, we are finding that our current Chromebooks have issues with Zoom open, with other tabs open, try to get content in there into the classroom. They tend to have connectivity issues with the camera, etc., because the device is just being taxed too much. So that's why we doubled the core, double the memory, double the power of the units, essentially, to support distance learning.
Thank you very much.
Any other board questions or comments?
This is Trustee Diaz.
Trustee Diaz?
I'll just comment that I appreciate the creativity with the funding. It's definitely one of the cases where we got lemons and we're trying to make the lemonade out of it. And so I really, really appreciate that. And then in combination, these 6,000 and the previous 3,000, we're getting up to 9,000 or so Chromebooks in the district that will suffice our needs for a while. And the students do notice. I mean, they'll notice. I've heard some of them mention not being able to enable virtual backgrounds and stuff like that, and so they'll obviously notice the difference with this as well. So thank you very much.
Any other board questions or comments?
If I may.
Yes, Ms. Kazar.
I just want to make another clarification, and that is the Zoom does support different features and different platforms, right? And because we're staying with the same platforms, the features that are supported in the current model versus the new model are going to be exactly the same. So I just want to make that that statement.
Well, this was an item that was discussed at length at our last board meeting, and you've addressed most of those things. One of the issues I was most concerned with was after the last time we purchased the 3,000 Chromebook forms, we're kind of, because of coronavirus, I understand we're between a rock and a hard place. So I support this and thank you for your work on this. This is an action item and I would entertain someone making a motion.
This is James. I move to approve.
This is Linda, I second.
We have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Quentin Xiao,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number G, approval of the district's 2020-2021 Every Student Succeeds Act Comprehensive Support and Improvement Plan. Dr. Padilla.
Thank you, President Good. Trustees, Dr. Flores, I am here to present to you the LEA's plan for our comprehensive support and intervention plan for South Valley Middle School and Ascension Solorzano Middle School. I do want to note that it is not a requirement by the state that this board be, or that this plan be approved by the board. However, for transparency, we did want to bring it to the board and in a public meeting so that everyone is aware that these two schools are deemed comprehensive support and intervention schools and that they are eligible for additional funding to receive support to make improvements to their system in the categories indicated on the state dashboard. So what you have in front of you is the proposal that will be submitted to the County Office of Education by October 31st. They also must approve this plan to move forward. You'll notice in the plan that this data is based on the 2018 dashboard data. The state determined that they wanted to continue with that dashboard data for this coming year and approve those that were already in comprehensive support and intervention, such as South Valley Middle School, to continue on until we have new data moving forward, hopefully in 2021. So we have South Valley continuing, and Solorzano, based on their 2018 dashboard data, is now eligible for this funding as well. So you will see in their single plan for student achievement reports, how exactly they will be utilizing this funding, as it is a requirement by the county office and by the state that they have a separate section that they must complete as being CSI schools, where they verify exactly how this funding will be utilized. And I am open for any questions.
Any board questions or comments? An information item. Thank you, Dr. Padilla.
Thank you.
Next, we have item number H, resolution 20/21-03 proclaiming the week of October 11th through 17th, 2020 as the week of the school administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Good. I'm very pleased this evening to recommend this resolution to the board, recognizing all of our management team. And as I've already said earlier this evening, I'm just so grateful to all of them for their tremendous efforts all the time, but particularly during distance learning. They've just risen to a whole new level and are doing an amazing job. And I'm just so proud of all of them. And so I sent them a letter earlier today, which I shared with you, and we're recommending approval of this resolution. And I believe board members wanted to read the resolution into the record. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Good.
That's correct. So it's going to be a little clunky because we can't see each other and we're not in a line. But if I'm going to go ahead and start, and if Linda could continue, and then after Linda, Enrique, and then Twin, and then James Pace, and then BC. And if when BC gets done, then we'll start again. So,
President Good?
Yes.
For some reason, when we were trying to get onto the meeting this evening, I have lost everything, so I do not have anything to read.
All right. Well, you'll be with us in spirit then.
Thank you.
I'll continue after Mr. Pace. Whereas leadership matters for California's public education system and the more than 6 million students it serves, whereas school administrators are passionate, lifelong learners who believe in the value of quality public education, and you're muted, Trustee Pacino.
Thank you, sorry. Whereas the title school administrator is a broad term used to define many education leadership posts: superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals, assistant principals, special education and adult education leaders, curriculum and assessment leaders, school business officials, classified educational leaders, and other school district employees are considered administrators. And next.
Trustee Diaz, you're muted.
Whereas providing quality service for student success is paramount for the profession, and
Whereas most school administrators began their careers as teachers, the average administrator has served in public education for more than a decade. Most of California's superintendents have served in education for more than 20 years. Such experience is beneficial in their work to effectively and efficiently lead public education and improve student achievement. And
whereas public schools operate with lean management systems. Across the nation, public schools employ fewer managers and supervisors than most public and private sector industries, including transportation, food service, manufacturing, utilities, construction, publishing, and public administration. And
whereas school leaders depend on a network of support from school communities, fellow administrators, teachers, parents, students, businesses, community members, board trustees, colleges and universities, community and faith-based organizations, elected officials, and district and county staff and resources to promote ongoing student achievement and school success. And
Whereas research shows great schools are led by great principals and great districts are led by great superintendents. These site leaders are supported by extensive administrative networks throughout the state. And
whereas the state of California has declared the second full week of October as the week of the school administrator in Education Code 44015.1, and
whereas the future of California's public education system depends upon the quality of its leadership, now therefore,
be it resolved by the Gilroy Unified School District that all school leaders be commended for the contributions they make to successful student achievement.
And I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
so moved. This is Linda.
PC second.
We have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Twins Young,
yes,
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have item number 9A, monthly facilities and maintenance update. Mr. Nato. Well, I see he's on there, but I don't hear him or see a video. Mr. Nato, are you there?
Alco can introduce the first item. I know we have our consultants here.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Superintendent and the Trustee Good. Dan, would you want to go through your items first? I know the financing update is after the facilities update.
Sure. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Dan.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Flores, President Good, board members. I don't have the PowerPoint, so I can't drive it. But anyways, my first item would be item C, ratification of purchase of 2 medium-duty Ford F-150 trucks. As I said in the subcommittee, we are using every possible available vehicle right now to keep 1 staff member of the maintenance crew per vehicle. Right now, some of our staff are forced to use their own vehicles. We are using vehicles that are set for the custodians to use at sites at Christopher High, South Valley. We have taken their vehicles. Some of these vehicles we pulled from inventory are pretty rough condition and probably shouldn't be on the road on a daily basis. So we did reach out to 3 different dealerships. You might ask why we kept it Ford. The majority, in fact, all but 1 vehicle in our fleet are Ford trucks. And after consulting our mechanic and transportation, he asked that we keep it Ford if we can get the right deal. So we did receive what I feel was a very good deal from Mission Valley Ford for 2 Ford trucks at a cost of $54,158.74. We took this to the facility subcommittee and they allowed us to purchase the vehicles and bring this as a ratification due to the deal would not be available probably in several days if we didn't take advantage of it. Next item is item I'm sorry, I don't see it. Item D, I'm sorry. Item D, I'm sorry. And I noticed I lost my background. I don't know, every time I tune into Zoom lately, my background's gone, so I apologize for that. Item D is the purchase of heavy-duty trash cans for Gilroy High School for the outer quad. Right now, they currently have galvanized tin trash cans, which are blown over, kicked over, vandalized quite easily, and garbage is spread all over the site. So these are basically the same trash receptacles that Christopher High has. This is probably long overdue, probably should have been done sooner. But the approval of this purchase is for $24,282.90. Next item is approval of contract with Anderson Tree Care for the removal of a very large tree in the Kinder area. that we have had some issues with. It's too large for our maintenance crew to service anymore due to access and just height of the tree and size and scope of the tree. So we did bring in Anderson's Tree to assess the tree originally, and we've used them quite a bit to come in and analyze and look and survey trees and give us an assessment of what the issues are. And they provided a quote that their recommendation was strong to remove the tree, which this is the quote: to remove and replace the tree. We will replace the tree under this proposal if approved, and we can add another tree or two to other areas of the site. There's not enough room in the kinder area to add another tree. Also, Anderson's is working on a quote to do a complete arborist report for the entire district right now. So hopefully we'll be bringing that to you soon. But the cost of removing this tree and replacing is $7,020.
A quick question on this item. Did
Yes.
we get any competitive bids?
I did not, because I brought them in originally to assess the safety of the tree. And at the time we felt it was urgent, and they have done quite a bit of work for us. So no, I did not get a competitive bid.
Okay, the only reason I asked, I don't have a picture. I don't know how big the tree is, but that seems like a lot of money to remove one tree.
Most of it's due to access and the proximity to the apartments behind it and the closeness to the building, and also that concrete tree well. I don't know if you can see in the picture there that's up on the screen, that needs to be removed and replaced. And that's included in the price.
And based on your experience, you think that's a reasonable
I
price?
think of all the tree people we've worked with in the district, I've had very, very good success with Anderson's. I trust his opinion. I've walked the sites with several. The other one that I would highly recommend is Mighty Tree Mover, but he actually subs this work out. He does not do it in company.
Thank you.
I think we should move forward with this, and I think we should add a second tree. I think we should, whenever we remove a tree, we should make sure we put in two to reforest the area.
We always try to remember and enforce the Bass rule. Last item for me is approval of contract with EnviroScience. This is for the AHURA report that is required. It's basically an asbestos or lead containing report for all our sites. Even if they're brand new, they still have to be done. EnviroScience did the original report and inspections for the district. It has to be done by EPA rules and regulations. Every 3 years, it has to be updated. So if we were to contract out with another company, they would have to do a complete initial report and inspection. So it'd be very costly. So to maintain this original document and update it is $20,800 with EnviroScience.
Thank you, Mr. McAuliffe. We did get Mr. Nato back on. We apologize, governing board and superintendent, for that. He lost his connection temporarily.
There we go. Excellent. Well, thank you for your patience. And I will move on with item, looks like 9G. This is an approval with a contract with Mighty Tree Movers, to stay with the tree theme. So we needed to do a few trims over at Brownell during the construction. And these are the sycamores that go along Carmel Street. They're very beloved by the neighborhood, so we're taking good care of them. But we needed to trim them back so we can get the track done. So we did that. At that same time, the contractor noted that our trees at Hannah in 2nd Street were, well, one of them was dead and 2 of them were dying. So he considered that an emergency fix. So he wanted to take those out immediately. So Mighty Tree Movers has put together a proposal for $8,200 to trim up the sycamores on Carmel and to remove the 3 trees at the corner at actually the bus turnaround at 2nd and Hannah for the Brownell School. Item 9H is the approval of a contract amendment with Jerome Zielinski, who is our project inspector or inspector of record for Brownell Middle School. So originally he put in a quote for 1% of the project. That was when our project was originally bid out, and that was at $48.8 million. We subsequently decided to add the, let's see, the 7th classrooms per each pod and the solar superstructures that cover the staff parking lot, which brought the price of the construction up. The delta to remain at 1% is $54,610, and those are that would come out of Measure E. Let's see. We also have item 9I. This is a contract amendment with Padre Associates for the soil management over at Club Drive. This just went over what we had a $10,000 contract, and due to some time discrepancies or extenuations due to soil coming over from Brownell back to Club Drive and getting the reports written to keep this property under what we're calling the DTSC management. They exceeded their contract by $925. Being that we are spending bond funds to cover this, I felt it important to bring it to the board to make sure that all expenditures are publicly known. Otherwise, yes, a smaller amount like this would generally not come in front of the board. Let's see. We have item 9J, which is a change order for KI Furniture. And that is, let's see, that is for a difference of $7,089.74. On September 17th, the board approved the purchase of furniture for the Brownell Library Media Center. And I think we presented this slightly too soon. We had finishes to add to the quote, and that changed the contract amount by about $7,000. We also added a few pieces of furniture that were not specified prior. So the total would be $50,091.61 coming from Measure E funds. And then
I'm sorry, is that the new total or is that the delta?
that is the new total. The
So
delta is $7,089.74.
Thank you.
And then the last item I have is the approval of purchase of the playground equipment for the from Specified, which is the all-inclusive playground grant put together for us by the County of Santa Clara. This financial impact is $1,328,080.84. This is fully reimbursable, and this is for the purchase and installation of 3 replacement playgrounds at El Roble, Glenview, and Rod Kelly. We'll be replacing the playgrounds as soon as we can get them scheduled. We're hoping to have them done before the January semester change, if you will. And I think I've spoken about this one a number of times, so I'm not sure you'd have any questions, but I'm open for any questions that you have on these items.
Any board questions or comments on items numbers 9C through K?
I'd just like to say on 9K, that is a very generous grant from the county, Santa Clara County. The supervisors approved that, and I think that's amazing. These designs for these playgrounds are really cool and inclusive, and this is a wonderful project. So thank you.
If there are no other board questions or comments, we still have to go back to item number 9B, but I would entertain motion to approve items 9C through 9K.
I guess I have a question. If I wanted to add that second 3 to the 9E, can I do that?
We're just taking, that's just for the removal.
No, it includes 1 tree.
Oh, okay. Sure.
I could get a price to include another tree at another location. I think the price to replace a tree in this particular location is a little more complicated because they have to remove so much soil because of the stump grinding. They have to go down so far. and deal with the tree well. So adding another tree, I could do that quite easily in-house, Mr.
Okay.
Pace.
Okay. And I don't need it to be right there. I just, on that campus somewhere, we should add an additional tree. So thank you.
When that was mentioned, I kind of had the thought of maybe in the front of the kinder at the entrance, there's that lawn area. We might be able to put a tree, a small, maybe a crepe myrtle in those areas, maybe one or two.
Okay. I will make a motion for items 9C through K.
BC, I second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Gwen Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Pisano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your reports, Mr. Nadeau and Mr. McCluffy. Next, we have item number B, Measure E financing update. Mr. Meza.
Thank you, President Good. Our district is incredibly grateful to the community for the passage of Measure E back in 2016. The district is currently rebuilding, as you know, Brownell Middle School, a campus $70 million project, completed the construction of a two-story building at Gilroy High. The pool, as you know, at Gilroy High was rebuilt, also with bond funds, just to name a couple of projects. So it demonstrates that GUSD is a good steward of public funds. And so we do have approximately 95 million in authorization left from Measure E. The governing board, of course, has earmarked 90 million for that to rebuild the South Valley Middle School that was originally built, components of that, of course, originally built in 1956. The design of South Valley has begun with ADIS Architects winning the competitive bid and Flint Builders also on the contract to build the school. So tonight we have an informational item on taking advantage of really historically low interest rates. I think today tied for historic interest rates in terms of 30-year bonds, et cetera, that significantly reduce the cost to taxpayers over the life of these general obligation bonds. And so tonight we do have Randy Merritt from Raymond James and Mr. John Isom from Isom Advisors to present options and a timetable for the board on the Measure E financing. Gentlemen, please.
Great, thank you, Alvaro, and thanks everyone. Hope you're having a good evening. Alvaro, if you could just go to the next slide. This presentation is kind of broken into two parts. The first part is just a little bit of a refresher on the district's bond program. Then we'll get specifically into sort of the next steps for issuing or accessing the remaining bond authorization for your projects. So this table here provides a summary of the district's outstanding debt. And you have two types of debt outstanding, COPs and general obligation bonds. General obligation bonds have been the primary funding vehicle for many of the district's facilities projects. You can see at the bottom there, and we'll refer to this later, that the district's outstanding par, or the dollar amount that the district is outstanding for the district's bonds, is $274.7 million. Next slide. I wanted to point out that from time to time, we do have opportunities to refinance debt of the district, whether it's COPs or GO bonds. And when interest rates are low and existing interest rates on debt is higher, we've looked for opportunities to save either the district money directly, as we did for the COP, and also for the GO bonds, which impact the taxpayers. And so back in 2016, the district had refinanced and saved about $9 million, which went to the district coffers. Focusing specifically on the GO bonds, just a refresher again, you know, the district has gone to the community 3 times to successfully pass measures in 2002, 2008, and 2016. The election in 2002 and 2008 have been sold, and there's no existing authorization remaining under those bond measures. But of the election of 2016, as Alvaro had mentioned, the district received an authorization of $170 million, and there is currently $94.6 million remaining under that authorization that is available to the district. I won't go through all the bullet points at the bottom of that, but we also did take advantage of some good interest rates to save taxpayers money on the district's general obligation bonds. So just looking at the next page here, this is the historical assessed valuation. This is one of the main drivers of the repayment of the district's general obligation bonds. And so the faster that your tax base grows, the district's tax base grows, the lower the tax rates are for the community, or the more revenue that is available to pay debt. And so higher growth is good for your district in the form of both lowering the cost of the debt on the community, as well as accessing your additional authorization. And this is very strong growth that you've seen with mid to high single digits for the last several years. Page 5 just summarizes the tax rates that your community pays on each of the 3 bond measures. While you don't have any more authorization under measure I and P, you can see there that the community is paying on those, and then you can see when the 2016 election kicked in and the cumulative tax there on the far right column. So this table brings us to sort of the segue for the next section of this presentation. And one of the calculations that we do every time we sell bonds for the district is we do a debt capacity test, which is mandated by the state. For unified school districts, it's 2.5%. For non-unified school districts, it's 1.25%. But the way that it works is we take that assessed value that we just saw in that chart for the current year in 2020 and 21, and we apply a 2.5% multiplier to get a gross bond capacity. And then to figure out what the district is eligible to borrow today, we have to make sure that we have enough capacity. And so we have to back out the $274.7 million that you'll recall from that first slide. And that leaves the district with $24.9 million. And, you know, Alvaro had mentioned, and I had mentioned as well, the district has, you know, more funding needs than that dollar amount, has authorization of $94.6 million. And so we wanted to talk about the options for the district at this point to access that remaining authorization, given this limitation. So one of the options is you wait, and that net bonding capacity will change over time, and it changes over time for 2 reasons. One, your assessed value will continue to change over time, and historically that has been a change that has increased over time. And so when the assessed value increases, your net bonding capacity goes up. The other thing that happens is every year when the county levies taxes, they use those taxes to pay down debt. And so that is helping in the form of reducing the principal amount of the bonds that are outstanding. So those 2 factors over time increase the net bonding capacity for the district. But you can see, and I know there's a lot of numbers on this page, but the highlight here, I think, is we're at 24.9 million right now. And over time, you're picking up, you know, roughly 22 million a year, 18 to 22 million a year. So it goes from 24 to 46 to 64 to 82 to 101 out in August 1 of 2024. So under the current limitations, the district would have to wait until 2024 to access that money. However, CDE and the State Board of Education has designed a process that allows school districts to access bond funds above, in situations when they're above the debt capacity. And that has been done since 2017. 46 school districts throughout California have used the waiver process to get an amount approved above the limitation, whether it's 1.25% or 2.5%. And we've been involved in a number of them. All of them have been successful, but it requires a little bit of upfront work, which we've laid out here. And you can see they want to understand a rationale for doing that. And the rationale is often low interest rates, good time to borrow, critical infrastructure needs, cost savings that are avoided by construction escalation, packaging projects together, and we help with Alvaro's help craft a rationale for that. And then there's a couple of other steps that are required, one of which is a public hearing to approve the district's submission of the waiver. And then CDE also requires the consultation of a bargaining unit, or the bargaining units, and an advisory committee. And just, Alvaro, if you wouldn't mind going back one page just for a second. The one thing with timing, and we'll get to this a little bit more, but the State Board of Education does not hold monthly meetings. They hold them every couple months, and so you can see here on the schedule the November, January, March, May scheduled meetings, and we'll talk about targeting either the January or March meeting to meet the district's funding schedule. So what would be required by the waiver process? Well, the limitation for unified school districts is 2.5%. If we were to plug in 3.1, that would give us 96.8 million. So we'd be asking in the waiver an increase from 2.5 to 3.1. To give you some context, I am aware of school districts that have increased their limitation from 2.5 to 5. I believe there's even one that did 2.5 to 6. So this request, from my experience, is not a big ask. This slide touches on interest rates, and Alvaro mentioned how attractive interest rates are right now. This red line represents interest rates for various maturities of bonds, ranging for a 1 to 30-year maturity. And the point here is the light blue lines represent the range interest rates have been since 1993 throughout that period of time. And the red represents where we currently are in the spectrum of where those interest rates have been. So we're at the very, very bottom. In some years, 1 through 6, we're all-time historical lows, and we're near the bottom for the rest of the years. So the next 2 pages, we've put together a schedule that would get us to the January and the March State Board of Education meetings, and so we've kind of laid out the varying steps to do that. And you can see the difference. One of the reasons that I had suggested to Alvaro about considering going to the January meeting is sometimes the State Board of Education agenda gets backed up, and sometimes I have seen these waivers take a backseat to some of the other items and they get pushed off. So my thought was to try to be ready for the January one if you guys are ready, and then if for some reason they punch us to a later one, then we're all set for that one. Are there any questions? And John, I don't know if you want to make any comments.
Hi. I'll just add one quick comment, and that is just to, I guess, reiterate kind of what you alluded to, is just how common this is. This is an extremely common process and procedure for districts that are in your shoes, and it's not just, oh, let's do it just to do it. This opportunity, this window, is going to save district taxpayers in the tens of millions of dollars. Again, assuming you get to lock in the low interest rates, the early part of next year. So, from the financial advisor's perspective, as a fiduciary to the district, this is something that is worth scrutinizing. You have a public hearing, there's much discussion, but financially, it would really be a windfall for your property taxpayers, and obviously for the district's benefit of getting facilities done sooner rather than later. So that's the only other thing I'd add, Randy.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing too. I think it's important to also remember that each bond authorization has its own tax rate limitation of $60 per 100,000, and we're not looking to increase the tax above that. I mean, we're legally restricted to that. This is simply giving us the authority to sell the bonds, and then we will do that within the construct of the tax rate limitations.
Randy, thank you so much for mentioning that, because our pledge to the voters is significant and it's real, and we definitely want to maintain our promises to them. I want to add that California, in general, as a matter of principle, has put the funding of facilities to local districts because they just don't support the facilities program many decades ago. So the fact that these waiver requests are coming in since 2017, that's just 3 short years ago, just goes to show you that Governor Brown shifted that responsibility of funding facilities to local governments. It's one of his many layers of local funding or local control funding formula, is he put this burden on our local communities. Therefore, we had to go to the community for Measure E to support this important capital improvement project. So I just want to give the public that context.
I'd like to add a comment too that we talked about in the facilities committee. The alternative would be not to go for all the funds at once, and then it would slow down the project. And I know you alluded to this, our consultants alluded to this, but we would be getting the money in chunks because we'd have to go out multiple times for the authorization rather than getting all the money at once. There's major disadvantage of going out for it in chunks is that it's going to slow the project down. And as alluded to, it's going to cost more, both for the financing and for the long-term cost of the bond to the voters. So by going out for all of this money, just like with Brownell, with the 70 million, we can proceed with the project at the fastest pace we can possibly move the project, because in construction, time is money. And the longer the project takes, the longer it'll cost. So I just wanted to add that project. This would allow us to proceed as quickly as we can with the entire project.
Okay, this is the information item. Are there any board questions or comments?
I just want to say the voters of Gilroy approved Measure E on the premise that we would rebuild Brownell and South Valley, and we are fulfilling that promise, and this is South Valley.
Great, thank you very much for your report. Next, we have board member reports. Are there any board member reports?
This is Trustee Diaz.
Trustee Diaz.
I just wanted to acknowledge the seniors in the district that are applying to schools around the country, around the world for that matter, and kind of planning out their next steps. I want to acknowledge them and wish them good luck. And I also want to acknowledge all the educators and staff and mentors who may be writing letters of recommendation for said students. It's kind of a job that goes unnoticed, but is really evident in my house at least, and I can imagine it is in many other educators' home as well. So on both ends, I wish them all luck and Godspeed, of course.
Thank you. Any other board member reports? Gone. Okay. Next, item 11, upcoming and new referral agenda items. Does anybody have any upcoming new or referral agenda items? Seeing none. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, November 5th, 2020 via teleconference. Closed session will begin at 5:30, followed by the regular meeting at 7 p.m. The agenda will be available on the district's website by 5 p.m. on Friday, October 30th. And thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
All right.